that despite failing this clearance, the appointment of Peter Mandelson as our ambassador went ahead. So let's bring straight into the conversation Darren Jones. Mr. Jones is Chief Secretary of the Prime Minister, Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Grateful for your time. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Can I ask you, when the Prime Minister said at a press conference concerning the vetting, quotes, vetting carried out independently by the security services, which is an intensive exercise that gave him, Mandelson, clearance for the role, was he lying or being utterly incompetent?
Good morning, Nick. What the Prime Minister was referring to was the process that allowed the Foreign Office to overrule the recommendation put to them by UK security vetting to appoint Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States. When I found out about this yesterday afternoon, I was out in Southampton campaigning with colleagues for the local elections when the Guardian story broke. I immediately came back to London, and what became very clear to me was this was not just an individual case in relation to Peter Mandelson, but the very fact that the Foreign Office and a small number of other organisations have the right to overrule a recommendation from UK security vetting not to appoint someone to a sensitive post because of security concerns is quite frankly astonishing. So I took the immediate decision last night to suspend the right for all of those organisations, including the Foreign Office, to do so, and I've commissioned an urgent review to understand how often this behaviour has taken place across government.
So who overrode the vetting system, Mr. Jones?
The Foreign Office had the right to overrule the recommendation put to it by UK security vetting not to appoint Peter Mandelson as ambassador. When the Foreign Office chose to overrule that advice, DV clearance, the vetting clearance had been cleared, and Peter Mandelson was allowed to be appointed to the role.
And you're asking the nation to believe all this went on blissful ignorance from the Prime Minister?
So the Prime Minister was not told about this until Tuesday evening this week, so I only found out about myself personally yesterday afternoon. But again, the fact that the process existed in the first place and that it did not require a department to notify ministers, or indeed Number 10, that they had overruled the recommendation of UK security vetting is, as I say, it's astonishing. It's completely unacceptable.
Having learnt on Tuesday, why has it effectively been forced out of him by the Guardian newspaper?
So the Prime Minister was told on Tuesday evening,
yes,
and he then immediately asked the Cabinet Secretary to provide to him the full facts about what happened when and who took what decision so that the Prime Minister could update the House of Commons with that information.
No, but I ask you, why did he wait? Why a delay of almost 48 hours?
Because the information had not yet been fully assembled for him to be able to go to the House of Commons to make that statement. As you know, he's going to be giving a statement to the House of Commons on Monday.
Why Monday? A matter of this gravity. Why does it take until Monday, Mr. Jones?
Purely because Parliament is not sitting today because it's Friday, Nick. If the House was sitting today, the Prime Minister would be there this
morning. Well, surely
morning.
he could make a statement from Number 10 or somewhere else.
I think it's important in these circumstances for the Prime Minister to make an address to the House of Commons.
Has Sir Ollie Robbins resigned or been fired?
He had lost the confidence of the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary, which is effectively a dismissal, and that's why he left his job as Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office overnight.
So you're honestly expecting the nation to believe that Sir Ollie Robbins, who served with distinction for 4 Prime Ministers, in some way, shape or form, allowed clearance to go ahead, despite that knowledge? He worked for Theresa May, he worked for Tony Blair, he worked for Gordon Brown, he worked for David Cameron in senior roles, and someone with that level of responsibility decided for whatever reason to allow clearance, and you want the nation to buy that?
That is my understanding of the facts, but I agree with you. I'm astonished that that is the case.
What happens to him now?
Ollie Robbins?
Yes.
He's left his post as Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office, so he returns to his private life.
You'll recall that in February there was this rather arcane process known as a humble address to compel the government to release all papers. When will those papers be released?
So the humble address has been a process that has required my department to go across government to summon documents that relate to the documents requested by the humble address. We've already published the first tranche of information. The second tranche of information is due to come before Parliament very soon. We're about to go into recess and prorogation with the King's speech, but we're not far off of being able to publish the second tranche of information. When this information became available, the information that UK security vetting had recommended against his appointment, Of course, legal advice was taken about being able to include that in the humble address, and we intend to do so once it's gone through the Met Police and the Intelligence and Security Committee.
Mr. Jones, the day before the Prime Minister said that Mandelson had clearance because he was supposedly blissfully unaware, he was asked in the House of Commons by Kemi Badenoch, did the official security vetting that he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, to which the Prime Minister replied, yes, it did. If so, why did he proceed?
So the Prime Minister in the House was referring to due diligence undertaken by the Proprietary and Ethics team in the Cabinet Office that is separate to the then enhanced security checks undertaken by UK security vetting. The documents that are put together by the security and vetting team are kept very, very tight because they contain deeply personal information about the individuals being scrutinised. They go through financial, personal, sexual, religious and other types of background information, and that is why it is kept extremely private on a portal that only a few people have access to. The Prime Minister was not given those documents because he would not routinely be given them about individuals' appointments.
When one of your senior colleagues, Dame Emily Thornberry, who chairs the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, says that MPs' quotes have been kept in the dark, people need to stop messing us about and tell us the truth. How embarrassing is that for you and your government, the government?
As I say, it's astonishing, and...
No, I asked if it's embarrassing, Mr. Jones.
It is, yeah, and the Prime Minister is furious about the fact that this...
Then why doesn't he come to the nation if he's so angry? Why must he wait until Monday?
Because the House will sit on Monday, and as I say, it's important, as Mr. Speaker and members of Parliament would expect, for the Prime Minister to address the House of Commons first.
Who said trust in politics is now so low, so degraded, nobody believes anyone can make a difference anymore. Do you recognise those comments?
I don't recognise them to be able
They came from Sir Keir Starmer 2 years ago. What's gone wrong?
Well, clearly there is a process that was in place that allowed the Foreign Office and other organisations to overrule the advice of UK security vetting. I put a stop to that immediately last night as soon as I became aware that that rule even existed in the first place. But it is the rule, that process, that has undermined the Prime Minister and the government because that was allowed to happen without notification to ministers.
What does this mean for the Prime Minister's future, Mr. Jones?
I don't think it brings the Prime Minister's future into question because he only...
You and I have known each other for some time. You honestly think that people will not be waking up this morning, reading their papers, listening to this radio show, thinking, what on earth is going on with this man who told us there would be a new trust in politics? And he pretends he didn't know. Well, we must take his word. And he somehow allowed clearance to go ahead.
I think the public, as much as the Prime Minister, as well as myself when I found out about this yesterday afternoon, have asked exactly the question, what on earth has gone on in this situation? There is no question that it was unacceptable. There is no question that it was unacceptable, not just in relation to Peter Mandelson, but the fact that this process was even allowed to exist not just in the Foreign Office, but a small number of other organisations as well. And it's quite frankly astonishing that this was allowed to be taken as a decision by the Foreign Office without making reference, at least to the Foreign Secretary, but of course the Prime Minister in the circumstances of a political appointment of this nature.
But you'll know better than I, Security Vetting SV is part of the Cabinet Office. No minister was told that Mandelson had failed. No minister.
That's my understanding. UK security vetting is a process housed by the Cabinet Office, but the advice is given to the sponsoring department. So the advice was given to the Foreign Office, which the Foreign Office then chose to overrule.
I come back to the idea then. Sir Ollie Robbins, who was Principal Private Secretary to Tony Blair, Cabinet Office for Gordon Brown, serving as David Cameron's Deputy National Security Advisor, Theresa May's Brexit negotiator, someone with this level of experience decides to effectively change all the clearance. It is preposterous, Mr. Jones.
The Foreign Office took the decision to ignore the recommendation, and as I'm told, this is not an individual case in relation to the use of this rule. It's happened in other circumstances, which is why I have asked the department to urgently tell me how often this rule has been used to allow departments to ignore the recommendation of UK security vetting.
You're nothing if not a thorough man. I've known you for some time. Why did he fail the vetting?
I have not seen the documents in question. They have not been shared with me. As I say, these documents are often deeply personal in their information. So I can't...
Do you know why he failed the vetting?
I can't tell you the detail of...
No, I understand that, and it's possibly legally you can't as well. But do you know?
I've not seen the forms, and I cannot tell you why they came to the conclusion they came to.
So you don't know why he failed the vetting?
All I know, and all that I can tell you, is that they concluded to recommend against his appointment because of concerns.
So this blows up. You're very close to the Prime Minister. You two have a conversation, and neither of you know why he failed the vetting.
I have not seen the vetting documents.
Wouldn't you ask? For the love of God, here, what the hell has happened here? What have we got wrong? And no one's thought to ask what it is?
Sure, Nick, I have asked the question, but the documents are currently going through legal processes, and
You do know, but you can't share it with the listeners, is that right?
I have not seen them.
So we still don't know why Lord Peter Mandelson failed?
I'm not allowed to see those documents at this point in time.
Can you give me a level, a metric of the Prime Minister's anger when you spoke with him?
I mean, it's hard to describe, quite frankly. I've used the word furious, but it is of a bigger scale. Not just because of the...
Would you expand?
Well,
when you say big, presumably some pretty fruity language I'd ask you not to repeat, Mr. Jones.
Well, exactly. I'm not going to add more colour, but given the nature of the problem here, not just in terms of the appointment, but the position that it has put the Prime Minister and Cabinet Ministers in as a consequence of the decision to overrule the recommendation for UK security vetting, and the fact that the system even allowed for that to happen in the first place, it's of a scale of a problem that we've not experienced in government before. It is beyond unacceptable, and it is right that you, your listeners, the Parliament, as well as I and other ministers, are not just astonished by the fact that this could happen in the first place, but need to take action to make sure it cannot happen ever again.
Last question, and this is the political side. Whether or not he's lost the trust of the nation, only time will tell. But Kemi Badenoch, Ed Davey, and others say that he has misled the House, which obviously, as you know better than anyone, is a very grave offence. Do you recognise that? Has Sir Keir misled the House?
No, I don't agree that he has misled the House, and I think any scrutiny of his statements to the House will show that that has not been the case.
But he did say on a number of occasions full due process was followed during this appointment, as it is with all ambassadors. As I say, due process was gone through in relation to this appointment. Well, it was. He failed, but he still got the job. Bouncing on the head of a pin here, aren't we, Mr. Jones?
But this is the nub of the problem. Due process was followed, but the fact that due process allowed for the Foreign Office to ignore the advice of UK security and vetting is astonishing.
Grateful for your time. Thank you. Darren Jones, Chief Secretary of the Prime Minister and Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, giving us the full background. And I find it extraordinary. We still won't hear from the man himself, possibly until Monday. Sitting in the studio with me, Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor. Where does this take us?
Nick, it's going to be a long weekend for Downing Street to get to that common statement which we hear from Darren Jones is going to be on Monday. But yes, you heard it there straight from the horse's mouth. The Prime Minister reportedly furious with this situation. Darren Jones telling you in that first interview, since this news all broke, we had a complete radio silence from the government on this yesterday, that he's now suspended the right for the Foreign Office to ever do such overruling ever again. He claims that his understanding was that no minister was told. I'm sure we're going to see scrutiny of all of these government claims over the next few days. He says the advice was given to the Foreign Office. Their story is that it is all down to the Foreign Office, it's all down to those officials, all down to Sir Ollie Robbins. He is the man being thrown under the bus for this whole saga. Interesting, I thought also the final thing that Darren Jones said to you there about that legal advice. It sounds like the government wants to release those vetting documents so that the public and us can all see exactly what's happened, exactly what's gone wrong here. If the government indeed give that green light, it will be astonishing to see those documents now.
Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor.